Good morning and welcome. The Cardano Summit is here again. We are again at capacity. It's about 800 people around the room here. Amazing venue. We have about 10,000 people watching online. We have 70 countries represented here. Now there's still a bit of way to go, right? I would like to have a situation that we have 190 countries, maybe 191, 192. I see some people in here who's already, planning the next country issuance and the next constitution. And you know what? We did a constitution. We wrote a constitution. We expressed it in smart contracts. And now there's people in the room here who's getting inspiration from that. Isn't that amazing, huh? Yeah. Woo! I mean, come on. I probably will miss a few, right? But we have people here from Germany, from Switzerland, from France, from UK, from Macedonia, Serbia, Poland, Russia, Austria, Singapore. Yeah, you name it, huh? We even had, we had people, I think, which we're not supposed to mention, who came here to have to cross borders because they really believe that Cardano is about serving all people. And when you think about it, right? Cardano is not about a blockchain. It's about people. It's about people who dare to believe that technology could do something different, who could empower institutions and people in a different way. We very often walk down that rabbit hole and we think about it's the bytes, it's the binaries, right? But in reality, this is not it. This is about the only piece of technology out there who's right now carving the path forward, who's powered by people. This is what Cardano stands for. And you know what? We are not alone. Cardano has fostered multiple other blockchains. We have people also here from Apex, did an amazing fork of Cardano. And they're building up an ecosystem. We have other people in the UTXO space, right? So this is also about inspiration. From verifiable proofs, from key research and core research, and about sharing that research to put the foundations for new technology stacks, who's going to make us post-quantum secure, and about sharing that. I spent last week talking to United Nations in Denmark and seeing some of the amazing projects, what they're doing. And to my great, great surprise, I walk into United Nations City in Denmark, and there's Cardano projects. How awesome is that, right? You are into this big building, very institutional. You meet, Cello, you meet Tezos, you meet Ethereum Foundation, you meet all the other blockchains which you know, and there walks in an army. Well, that's probably a bit much, but there walks in a crowd of Cardano projects, plus a crowd of people who says, how do we get on Cardano? I mean, isn't that amazing? I mean, how do we actually establish trust as a global scale in a digital-first world? Because it's no longer about code. We don't need another hard fork right now to go to the next level. The only thing we need is the 10,000 people who is listening right now, minimum, and the people who went all the way to Berlin. Berlin knows a thing about rebuilding, about reinventing itself through collaboration, community, and innovation. They've done this several times. This is so close to the DNA of Cardano. And I think this is why we also chose to be here. But that's the emotional part. Let's look at some of the data points. We now have over 100 German mid-sized to large-sized companies who's using and benefiting from the features of Cardano through a famous Cardano project called Masumi from Service Plan. 100 projects. For years, we've been talking about, the European Union and the European Parliament want something called a digital product passport, right? This idea, if it's produced in the European Union, if it's sold in the European Union, it needs to have a digital product passport who goes all the way to the expiry of the product. Now, this can be a really sort of a weird thing, right? But what this really is a liability on the balance sheets of startups, right? Because very often the physical product lasts for generations, but the company might not last for generations. But today, I am wearing a watch, a Cardano watch, from a Swiss manufacturer, hand-produced from Maurice Mauriac with a full digital product passport engraved into it, including an ADA wallet. So we're no longer talking about digital only, digital first. We're now talking about that here in the German space. We are talking about regulation enables innovation, and now we are producing physical goods anchored on the Cardano blockchain. Yesterday, some of you saw 300,000 bicycles on the Cardano blockchain, and they just signed another agreement with another 1 million bicycles on the Cardano blockchain. Right? We're soon becoming into an era where there is more goods on the blockchain than we are members of the digital state called Cardano. Isn't that amazing, huh? Now, I truly believe that trust should be public, verifiable, and decentralized. Now, sometimes we need to, eat our own dog shit, right? And sometimes this is hard. We went through it with Bitcoin, right? So when we discovered how much energy consumption Bitcoin did, some of us were smiling, right? Because we knew Cardano was, better, faster, cheaper to a certain extent, right? But then regulation came in, and we had to get something called a MiCA regulation, and Cardano was the first blockchain in the world who got a MiCA license. Now, on top of that, a year later, we're sitting in here, and some of our engineers will be walking around the room with a new node with the size of this, powered by a AA battery, who's now able to verify blocks on the Cardano blockchain. A AA battery, right? So we are in a place right now where we are not just moving faster or at the same pace as innovation, but we're bridging the gap to not just being regulatory conform, but having enterprises who said, okay, we gave up on blockchain. It was too expensive. It was just too complicated. There was uncertainty about the supervisory authorities, about, the stock exchanges, about, the ISA 30401 type 1 and 2 certifications, all these kind of weird things none of us in the community really knows a lot about. But now the situation has switched, right? Because we have a very uncertain geographical risk moving around where the world is defragmenting. So here in the European Union, there's suddenly countries are saying we cannot be in an American stack, right? In the US, they say, oh, we need to be in an American stack, right? But what are we? We are the world stack. Because Cardano is operated from around the world. And after a few months, we will not just be operating on one type of software, we will not just be operating on two types of software, we will be operating on the community's software in plural, all governed by you, the community. There's no longer one person or two person or three person driving that. Well, somebody has to go on stage and do the opening, right? But it's not about one or two individuals. Every time I come to these events, I was in Token a couple of months, last month in Singapore, right? I meet Cardano projects I've never heard about, or I meet blockchain projects or enterprises who are switching to Cardano. Sometimes we are a little bit hard on ourselves and we stay in this bubble. But that bubble is bursting. And the fact that we have companies like Johnson & Johnson, who is vibe coding with Fabian yesterday on the ground about, reinventing pharmaceuticals and, tracking blood. So we have Novo Nordisk here, we have Würth, a family-owned business who's moving with Iagon, right? We have a lot of these traditional companies coming in. And who is the best ambassadors for embracing them? Clap the other guy or girl on the shoulder because he's sitting next to you or she's sitting next to you, huh? This is you. You know everything there is to know about Cardano. Now, the question is, if you really look deep into it, we've been through some rough years, right? In 2017, we barely had a transaction ledger, right? I think some of the crew in here who was brought in to kind of fix that little issue, they're still walking around, and so many of them, Duncan and so on the streets here today, right? We went through a couple of hard forks, right? We got up to a level where we are par with Ethereum. We're able to challenge Wall Street. And now we're in a situation that you can do everything you want on Cardano. Now, there might be things which is economically not, a good idea to do on Cardano. There might be things which is too transparent. because your business model might be a little bit flawed or whatever that might be. But rest assured, everybody, there is not a target operating model we cannot do on Cardano right now. The question is, who do you call? If you don't know how to implement it, or you don't know the business ramifications, the business logic, if you don't know the legal consequences, if you don't know the policies, if you don't know the documentation, who do you call? If you don't have the funding, who do you call? Look around in this room, because all of that is here. We have an army of lawyers and compliance people in here. We have an army of regulators and policymakers from around the world in this room. We have big tech, small tech, human tech, social tech. We have it all in here. We have some of the best engineers. We have people who have been chased down by nation states to basically do nation-state governed identity, and they still choose to work for Cardano, and they're still on our stack, and they're still spreading the word, right? So I believe that what you will find in this historic building here today is an army of change makers. The knowledge is all here. We no longer need to think about, if we had that little feature, or we can do this and that. No, we have it all. And on top of that, we have a scalable, working governance model. I know some of you are a bit tired of this, right? It's a little bit much governance these days, right? And there's a little bit much changes and so on. But we have a scalable, documented governance model. So I believe there's really nothing who can stop us right now. Now, what we do need to get to is we need to get to a situation that the income of Cardano is matching the incentives of Cardano. And that is the day where Cardano is finally set free. Because when we get to that situation, nothing holds us back. If you're in doubt about what that needs, it's about somewhere, depending on how you do the numbers, right? But it's about 500 times the amount of transactions we're seeing on Cardano today. And obviously, we would like to get that in a diversified aspect with as many use cases as possible. But if you saw the Battle of the Builders yesterday, I mean, it's amazing, right? So what we need right now is we need marketing, not general marketing, but we need marketing, people-driven marketing with clear KPIs, as the marketing committee was suggesting yesterday. What we need is you to walk through those doors. We need generations who've been building businesses and taking over businesses, like the second generation watchmaker, who's doing everything with their hands, and now suddenly they believe so much in Cardano that they're on Cardano, right? This is the army of change makers we brought together in Berlin. And Berlin certainly knows something about rebuilding itself. So thank you very much for being here. It's a true pleasure serving you all. It's a true pleasure being a digital citizen of Cardano, which now turns physical. I really appreciate, even though it's a lot of work, to be a part of the voting and all of those things. But now it's time to really ask yourself, how will you write the next chapter in the Cardano family history? Thank you very much.